economist at Westpac Bank. Can't wrap my mouth around that on Friday, James. I'm just going to let you two do the speaking, I think. It's probably worth it if I don't. Thanks for coming and joining us for the newspaper review. Let's start off on that front page of the Times. It's official, the Great Recession has ended, saying that GDP is almost back to where it was in 2008. Probably likely to be just 0.1% lower, which is virtually the same. Just how symbolic is that?
Well, I mean, the recession ended in 2009. You could argue when we started growing again. I mean, this is just an alternative definition.
But people haven't felt that growth at
all. Oh, I think they are starting to feel it now. I mean, there's very strong jobs growth coming through. The quarterly growth pace for quarter after quarter now, for a year, has been very solid, above trend.
But does that mean that by saying that growth is back to where it was in 2008, the GDP is back to where it was?
The level of the GDP, yes.
Yeah, that's more kind of symbolic communications message for the government, really.
I think it is for communicating, but also you need to make the point that what's more important is the balance of growth. Is it coming from exports and investment, or is it simply because the housing market is booming? That's more important, I think, than whether or not the level of GDP has reached where it was in 2008 or not.
So are there any caveats in this?
Well, yeah, I think there are, and that is that we are concerned about the housing market. The Bank of England is concerned. The Financial Policy Committee looks like they might be talking about what we call macro-prudential controls on housing, limiting the amount of money that banks can lend to individuals who haven't got big deposits, for example, because they're worried about the housing market, which is very strong, because interest rates are low. But the rest of the economy isn't yet ready for interest rates to be lifted.
And also, we don't know that interest rates, it's a waiting game, isn't it? When are they going to rise?
That's right. Now, the housing market could probably do with higher rates now, but the rest of the economy just isn't ready for it.
I thought it was quite interesting how this article really rammed home the depth to which the recession did plunge us all. 6 years of recession. It took 2 years longer to get back to this state of growth than it did after the Great Depression of the 1930s. And the other
it was a short recession, very short though, but deep.
Painful, yeah.
Okay, sticking with money news, looking at the front page of the Financial Times, we were just talking about Mario Draghi earlier, weren't we? Again, talking about inflation, but here across the entire Eurozone, this issue of low inflation and this fear that we've had we might even be potentially entering deflation, which has been the curse of Japan for so long.
Parts of the Eurozone have been in deflation. Spain dipped its toe in March. Portugal was there at the moment. Slovakia, Greece and Cyprus certainly have been, for the best part of a year, are seeing prices fall. And what that does, it makes people think, okay, I'll buy something tomorrow rather than today because it's going to be cheaper. You get this downward spiral where prices fall, activity declines. That's what they want to avoid in the broader Eurozone. And the risk is that we're heading in that direction with prices this low. And if the euro keeps appreciating, that'll be another factor that'll weigh down on inflation.
The big question is, what is the European Central Bank, the ECB, going to do at its next meeting? Because I think the general consensus is that's going to be a crucial meeting, isn't it?
Look, our view is that interest rates are pretty much life expired. They're 0.25%. They could tweak them a little bit. The next big thing, as we were talking about earlier, is probably simply going to be some form of quantitative easing, whereby the ECB will effectively print euros. What assets they'll buy remains to be seen. We think they're going to try to fire up the asset-backed security market by getting banks to package up loans, but that'll take some time, and he needs to announce something in June.
Let's move on and talk about this story on the front page of the China Daily. China's premier in Nigeria for the World Economic Forum meeting, talking about massive Chinese investment in African infrastructure, wanting to connect all of Africa's capitals by rail, $10 billion loans to improve infrastructure, $30 billion line of credit. It just goes to show the extent of Chinese investment in Africa.
I used to be a train driver before I was an economist. The Chinese love railways.
Why did you give that up?
Well, it was the best job in the world, actually. But, I had to move on in life. And in Tasmania, there aren't many railways, just like in Africa. But look, the Chinese invest in railways as a means to stimulate their economy. They pull back on investment in train lines when they think things are running too hot. I've got to question whether or not it's justified in Africa. I mean, is there really the need for a high-speed network? Is there the need for the labour market mobility? Have they got the freight
about it as a kind of kickstarter to development and economic growth?
Oh, it's great. But is it like digging holes? That's the point. I mean, is it going to actually generate a return over a long period of time? That's the question I'd ask.
for Western economies here that are not investing as heavily in Africa? I mean, is the West getting left behind?
Look, a lot of the companies,
the fastest growing continent.
A lot of the companies we talk to are just worried about the legal system there. They're worried about political stability. There are other parts of the world where you can invest, where things are a bit more certain, and I think that's been something that's really holding Africa back.
Quick look at the Japan Times now. Should we be worried about falling birth rates around the world?
It's a big issue already in countries like China, Italy, Germany. Their economies, Germany and Italy, certainly risk going backwards simply because they're not generating the young people. Who's going to pay them, earn the money and pay the pensions for the ageing population? It's a serious issue. The one country that's not really suffering from this actually is India. India's got all sorts of problems, but it hasn't. A low birth rate isn't one of them.
Yeah, China responded to this, of course, didn't it, by actually rescinding the one-child policy.
It's going to take time. It's going to take such a long time for the demographics to turn around in China. China's doing well at the moment, but it's not necessarily going to be a boom story for the next few decades.
Okay, front page of the Telegraph has got to be a good idea. Traffic lights stay red for longer so people can take their time crossing.
The law of unintended consequences will come into play here. I don't know in which direction, whether it's economy or rear-ending car accidents or whatever, but somehow or other it's going to be a bad idea from some perspectives.
It's great. I mean,
but it's great for people who are slow getting across the road.
Look, I used to live in America. In Washington, D.C., you have like a minute and a half to cross a tiny road. They're very generous there. In Los Angeles, you better run.
But will they let you
You
go?
want to cross the road with your life in your hand.
There's no one actually crossing the road. Will they let you go through the red light?
They're going to monitor the amount of people waiting and deciding how long the car should stop for. But it shows the prioritisation of the pedestrian, doesn't it? That's a good thing, isn't it?
Yes, but if it means the drivers get more upset and angry with pedestrians, it could be a bad thing. That's what I mean by unintended consequences. You've got to think these things through. I think it's more for the headline than necessarily something that will stick.
Okay, very quickly, front page of The Guardian there, Angelina Jolie in the premiere of her latest movie. It's the remake of a kind of fairy tale of Sleeping Beauty. But my point is that she was doing this yesterday. The day before, she's making very serious points about the Nigerian schoolgirls. Does this add to her credibility or take away from it?
I think she gets to say things that people listen to about the Nigerian schoolgirls because she does this. So I think it's actually, there's no conflict at all.
Good point. Okay. James Shugg, thank you very much for joining us to talk about the papers. If you are watching here in the UK, stay tuned for Breakfast with Charlie and Naga on BBC World News. Plenty